faithfully conveying value and interpreting great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally Talks Books. Today, we're interpreting a book for you called Interpreting Plato. Speaking of Plato, you might have heard of Platonic love, which means pure spiritual love, and many see it as the ideal, perfect love. You might also have heard of Plato's masterpiece, The Republic. In this book, Plato describes his most ideal, perfect state. So he's seen as the embodiment of perfection and ideals. But actually, what Plato left for humanity isn't just these things. As one of the three great sages of ancient Greece, Plato was a student of Socrates and a teacher of Aristotle, playing a pivotal role in academia. He was the synthesizer of ancient Greek philosophy, with unique insights in many fields. Today, this book will restore the real Plato from history and give a simple overview of his main ideas. The author, Julia Annis, is a philosophy professor at the University of Arizona. She taught at Oxford and Columbia, specializing in ancient philosophy. Before exploring Plato's thoughts, let's first learn about his life. Plato can be considered a very long-lived ancient person. He was born in Athens in 427 BC and died in 347 BC, living to 80. Plato's parents were from prominent Athenian families. His mother was a descendant of Solon, one of the seven sages of ancient Greece. His father's lineage traces back to King Codrus of ancient Athens. Legend says Plato's original name wasn't Plato, but Aristocles. Aristocles got the name Plato because his gym teacher gave him that nickname. The reason is Plato had broad shoulders and was once a broad-backed wrestler. In Greek, Plato means broad. So some believe people called him Plato because he left vast writings with varied styles and broad knowledge. But whether Plato was his real name or nickname as a youth, he focused on holistic development of body and mind. Like many Athenian youths, he loved physical exercise, so he had a strong physique from a young age. Meanwhile, young Plato also loved literature, especially poetry. He even wrote hymns praising Dionysus, the god of wine. Had Socrates not appeared and completely changed Plato's life path toward philosophy, he might well have become a great poet. In 307 BC, 20-year-old Plato began studying under Socrates. At that time, Socrates was already over 60, with countless disciples, and people flocked to Athens from all over Greece, all just to become Socrates' students and hear his teachings. So, how did Plato become Socrates' student? Legend says Socrates once dreamed of a white swan circling his head before perching on his knee. The next day, Plato came knocking to become his disciple. Thus, Socrates believed the dream swan was Plato, and that swans were divine birds in Greek mythology. So many thought Plato was divinely sent to succeed Socrates, though this remains just a legend. Beyond his exceptional talent, Plato's persistent nature was key to his achievements. There's a story about this persistence. In Socrates' first class, he said, today I'll teach something simple, arm swinging, demonstrating forward and backward swings. And Socrates asked, starting today, can you all do 300 swings nightly? Everyone thought it easy. Next day, when Socrates asked about the swings, all claimed they'd done it. A month later, only half had continued. After a year, only Plato persisted when asked. This perseverance shaped his accomplishments. In 399 BC, 70-year-old Socrates was executed by Athenian vote for impiety and corrupting youth. Devastated, Plato abandoned politics, seeing it as corrupt. Without Socrates, Athens became his place of sorrow. So, at 28, Plato left Athens and embarked on a 12-year journey. During these 12 years, Plato not only traveled all over Greece, but also visited Egypt, southern Italy, and Sicily. At that time, various philosophical schools were scattered across Greece and Italy. Interacting with their representatives enriched Plato's thinking, serving as another form of learning for him. In 387 BC, at 40, Plato returned to Athens and founded the Academy, in a city named after the hero Academus in the northwest suburbs. At the academy, Plato taught students while writing books until his death at 80, lasting 40 years. The Platonic Academy can be considered Europe's and even the world's first comprehensive school teaching philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, music theory, and more. It was it was the predecessor of modern universities, and the English word academy comes from the name of the academy's location, Academius. After Plato's death, the academy continued operating until it was forced to close in 529 AD due to war. This academy, running continuously for over 900 years, gathered many of the great minds of the ancient Western world. It made huge contributions to advancing the study and spread of philosophy and other disciplines. Although the Platonic Academy was the predecessor of modern universities, it was quite different from them. For example, the Academy didn't award degrees, grade exams, or issued diplomas. Teachers there didn't have titles or positions. Back then, studying philosophy couldn't earn a living, so only wealthy youths without financial worries could study there long term. So the students' love for learning was truly genuine. For instance, Plato's most famous student, Aristotle, spent 20 years at the academy learning from Plato and teaching others as an instructor. The academy's teaching method was also different from modern schools. It wasn't just lectures, but involved dialogues between teachers and students. Most of his works were written in dialogue form, which is a hallmark of Plato's writings. However, Plato never appeared in his own works. The main character was his teacher. Socrates appears in almost all of his writings. Plato precisely used Socrates' voice to express his own thoughts. So, what are the main ideas of Plato? Below, I'll summarize for you the three main ideas in Plato's writings. Plato dedicated himself to establishing philosophy as an independent discipline and proposed ideas like the theory of forms and learning as recollection. What people now call philosophy, the Greek word philosophy means love of wisdom. Although before Plato, many philosophers studied various philosophical questions, it's generally believed that philosophy became an independent discipline using love of wisdom to refer to philosophy. It started with Plato. Plato believed that philosophy is a unique way of thinking about a wide range of issues fundamentally different from disciplines like rhetoric and poetry. The research methods of disciplines like poetry are essentially different. Philosophy uses dialectic to seek truth, commonly said as truth isn't clear without debate. The dialogic form in Plato's works is precisely the best embodiment of this method of debate. Philosophy in Plato's time was all-encompassing, broadly covering different areas like philosophy of nature, society, and human beings. In other words, modern natural sciences, sociology, political science, ethics, etc., were almost all included in the philosophy of Plato's time. And the truth in these fields must be obtained through debate. But debate has a premise that truth must exist objectively and be unchanging. So, for this purpose, Plato proposed the theory of forms. What is the theory of forms? You can understand it as that behind all things there is an objective truth, what Plato called the forms. The forms are the basis on which the gods created all things in the world. All things created by the Creator, though diverse, cannot escape these forms, and all things in the world change, can come into being and perish. However, the forms are neither born nor destroyed, eternal and unchanging. For example, in real life, people can see flowers of various kinds, colors, and sizes. Although they vary greatly, people can recognize them as flowers, not something else. Why is that? Because behind different flowers, there is an unchanging form of a flower. The gods created a perfect world and embedded the forms in all things. Understanding the forms is the so-called truth people should strive to know. Knowing truth is also the goal philosophy aims to achieve. So, how do people learn knowledge and recognize truth? Plato then proposed the view that learning is recollection. Plato believed that humans, unlike other animals, are actually born with various knowledge. Truth is buried within people's hearts. From birth, learning to walk, speak, or acquire physical skills are all processes of awakening innate abilities. The same applies to learning knowledge. Take mathematics, which Plato most revered. He considered it the most fundamental of all knowledge. He even placed a sign at the academy entrance reading, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter." Plato believed mathematical theorems like the Pythagorean theorem, known as Gugu theorem in China, were already rooted in people's minds. It's just that Pythagoras first recollected it in ancient Greece and helped others recall this knowledge. Although Plato's core views, like the theory of forms and learning as recollection, may seem idealistic today, they were bold and unique for his time. They explained many issues in human cognition and truth. Plato transformed philosophy from studying specific problems into an independent discipline, establishing Western philosophy's basic research domains and methods. Next, let's discuss Plato's second major idea concerning politics and society. During Plato's era, Athens, though politically unstable, was predominantly democratic. Many considered democracy superior, yet it was precisely the democratic assembly that sentenced his teacher, Socrates, the acclaimed philosopher, to death. This filled Plato with rage and drove him to deeply contemplate an ideal human society, an ideal state. What exactly should it look like? For this, he pondered throughout his life and wrote extensively on the subject. The most famous among these works is the Republic. In Plato's view, justice forms the foundation of an ideal human society. While democracy establishes equality, this doesn't necessarily create a just state. Different types of people, according to their inherent natures, each fulfill their roles. Only then can a state be ideal and a society just. Plato's Republic is divided into three classes. The third class consists of producers like farmers and artisans, forming society's lowest tier. The second class is the warrior caste, soldiers who serve as the ruler's right hand, protecting national stability through force. The first class is the rulers, who should possess supreme wisdom, philosophers. They rely on intelligent minds. Plato believed these three classes are innate. If these classes become disordered, societal and national chaos may ensue. Any state model other than this tripartite system would cause social disorder and imperfection. For example, democracy might elect the wisest to govern, but could also lead to chaos and poor decisions. Take Socrates' death. Athens selected a 500-member jury by lottery. Among such a large jury, a significant portion likely lacked judgment. This trial mistakenly granted ruling power belonging to the first class to citizens of other classes. Plato believed transitioning from democracy to the republic required further progress. The republic demands not just strict class divisions, but also economic reform. Private property should be abolished in the republic, replaced by communal ownership. Only this eliminates corruption and internal conflicts, the earliest prototype of communist society. Though unrealized, Plato later described Atlantis, a fictional continent with perfect governance that sank catastrophically beneath the ocean. For over 2,000 years, since Plato, discussions on the Republic in Atlantis persisted. The former became central to political studies, while the latter inspired explorers and sci fiction writers. For instance, Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea depicts a submarine discovering sunken Atlantis. Actually, Plato cared not only for state and society, but also for how individuals should live. Now, let's discuss Plato's third major idea. What constitutes perfect life and perfect love? Many believe perfect life means feeling happy and fulfilled with health, wealth, beauty, etc., seen as essential elements. But for Plato, above these elements lies something more crucial: virtue. For individuals, neither health nor wealth alone brings happiness. Virtue is needed to use them properly. Thus, health and wealth are double-edged swords. They can enable happiness and perfect life. It depends on how we apply them in life. This view became foundational for modern ethical theories of happiness. In modern society, health improves and wealth increases, yet overall happiness declines. The reason? People neglect pursuing and upholding personal virtue. Plato saw virtue as heaven sent and unchanging. As mentioned earlier, just as knowledge is recollection, heaven bestowed virtue requires lifelong self-exploration, recognizing these virtues, learning to apply them, never abandoning heaven's gift. Upholding virtue brings perfect life, ultimate happiness, and true wisdom. For example, when sentenced to death, Socrates could have fled, but chose death, believing escape violated virtue. Plato considered his teacher's choice the ultimate demonstration of virtue and model of perfect life. Having discussed perfect life, let's now explore perfect love. When mentioning common misconception, many interpret it as spiritual romance between men and women. Is that accurate? Platonic love indeed means spiritual connection, but if you think it refers to heterosexual romance, you're quite mistaken. Plato originally meant same-sex mentor-student bonds, like Socrates, Plato, or Plato, Aristotle, transcending age and roles through spiritual connection. But it's not the same as what people now call homosexuality, because Platonic love refers more to spiritual communication between the same sex. It primarily focuses on older men imparting knowledge to younger men with minimal physical involvement. So, actually, in ancient Greece, same-sex relationships, whether spiritual or physical, weren't socially stigmatized. For example, many warriors who fought side by side were same-sex lovers. They formed partnerships to inspire each other and battled bravely. However, Plato emphasizes spiritual exchange here. Spiritual love is the most perfect form of love. All right, that concludes our discussion on Plato. The third aspect of thought. For individuals, perfect life and love mean upholding virtue and engaging in spiritual love. Plato inherited and developed his teacher Socrates' ideas on truth and virtue, becoming the synthesizer of ancient Greek philosophy. And he founded the academy, which became the precursor to modern universities. He was the first to propose philosophy as a separate discipline and introduced influential ideas like the theory of forms. His interests ranged widely, from building a perfect state to achieving personal perfect life and love, providing a foundation for later thought. In Raphael's famous Renaissance painting, The School of Athens, it depicts over 50 ancient Greek philosophers. Among them, the two at the center, surrounded by others, are Plato and his student. It can be said that Plato not only led the golden age of ancient Greek philosophy, but also possesses timeless power, guiding later generations in the relentless pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. All right, that concludes our interpretation of Plato. Listening notes are below the audio. We'll see you tomorrow.